What's going on, guys? It's your boy Darth. We're back with some more Queensblade Limit Break video content, and we're finally going to backtrack and cover the very first dual attribute ultra rare warrior, Snow White. I like saying it that way, Snow White. I don't remember where I got. Oh no, Deadpool. He did a Deadpool trailer. He did a spoof of him being Bob Ross, and he called the white. He was mixing the paints, or every time he changed color of paint, he had a different name for it. So just reach down here and get a little bit about Betty White. It's just the accent that he uses to throw it on there. And we're not talking about Rachel Zegler's Snow White either. That little wench can just lock herself in a closet somewhere and never come out again. I digress. We're talking about the dual attribute ultra rare poisoned apple princess, Snow White. And she is super cute. Man, the color scheme here, the green, the apple with the little devil kitty inside, awesome. I always choose to ignore when a beautiful woman is holding a knife. Just reminds me that she could cut off my dangle anytime I disappoint her or upset her. So, and she's an anime chick, so she'd probably do it. Just treat women with respect, guys, or they'll cut off your dangle. All right. She is super cute. I gotta give him credit on that one. There's nothing too outlandish about it, and maybe that's the appeal. Like, she's got a little bit of librarian in her, but a little bit of there's more to me than librarian. Spicy pose is awesome for how. Look at this. I'm starting to get a little more like, man, this is the pose that my lady friends should actually be in. Every man's lady friend should be laying on a rug, a nice little foam rug or a silk rug or something, just right by the entryway door. That way when her man walks in, he's greeted to this. This would save a lot of marriages. Probably. I don't know. Whatever. I'm just saying. This is the pose that, just buy some panties, ladies. Rip them a little bit and do this pose when your man gets home. Guaranteed to get you almost anything you want, including dinner at the restaurant of your choice. God damn it. Alright, getting into her abilities here. Look, she's classified as a mage. Okay, so she's an AoE attacker. Ignore defense, group attack, poison. Let's see if they gave us a brief, good description here. Passives. She gets 50% increase to attack, 30% increase to HP added to... So any HP and attack added, they get an increase to, and that is additive, not cumulative, based on the attack added at the time. Crit rate plus 20%. I like seeing these types of passives here. Crit rate, crit damage, something like that when it comes to these attackers and things like that. However, this one actually has a really good passive. G123 doesn't always get it right when it comes to passives. Extra abilities on passives anyways. This one, damage taken to allies is reduced by 10% for each poison the attacker has, up to a maximum of 40%. So you can get a 40% damage reduction. Can you do it with this warrior? I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. Moving on to her turn 1 ability. 2-turn cooldown, deals 120% magic damage to all enemies, with an 80% chance to inflict a poison. Okay, 80's good. At max level, Ultra Rare Warrior, I want to see this go up to 90, and as usual on mages, I want to see the attack damage go up by a little bit more than that. Come on, guys. And inflicts poison type on all enemies. Poison type basically is a debuff where every time the target takes damage equal to 15% of its maximum HP, which I don't know if I like that. Now that I think about it, I didn't think about that before. Inflicts 1 poison on the beautiful warrior with the same attribute as the target. Lasts for 2 turns and cannot be removed. Now, this is a bit of a wonky one where I haven't been able to actually pinpoint through testing, and I did some testing before this video. Basically, if a target takes damage equal to 15% of its max HP, which is not easy to do all the time, which doesn't make this overpowered, but 15% of its maximum HP to inflict a poison. Poison is very powerful. Remember, poison loses 5% of their max HP, which is an HP burn, and cannot exceed 1,000% of a user's attack, which means it has a high cap, assuming you can get a lot of poisons out. 15% of a maximum HP is not hard to do, but it's also not easy to do. depending upon how you look at it. I didn't crunch the numbers. Anyways, the same attribute as a target. If you're fighting a single target, poison type debuff actually goes out on bosses, but it doesn't actually inflict an extra poison that I can see, and that's what would help out this warrior a little bit if it did. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just can't see the way the damage numbers roll out and how things apply if that's actually happening. And that's important. We'll talk about that here in a second. Her turn 2 ability, 4-turn cooldown, deals 60% magic damage. Okay, extends the duration of target's poisons by 1 turn. This is actually really cool. Breach plus 10%. All breach is a new mechanic that is basically tantamount to ignoring another more amount of defense. Blah, blah, blah. I don't like the breach effect. I think that, anyways, we'll touch on that in another video. But anyways, for each poison the target owns, maximum of 50%, basically saying, hey, we're gonna ignore your defense, basically. Think of what breach as. By 50%, deals defense ignoring damage equal to 40% of attack for each poison the target owns. This was really cool until you read up to a maximum of 5 times. So I got really excited about this warrior because I like using Aranea, the spider spider warrior queen, on single target bosses because of the poison effect that it gives multi-turn attackers or multi-attackers per turn warriors. You stack that poison up, doing 5% max HP damage. The other day I had 25 stacks of poison on one of the bosses. Turn 2, it goes off, but it's a 4-turn cooldown, meaning that you can't reapply it until turn 5 because you have to let the 4 turns actually play out. Not turn 5, I'm sorry. You have to wait 4 turns, and then on the next turn it applies it again. So it's not too terribly overpowered, but the fact that it applies up to a maximum of 5 times really hit me hard because she would have done defense ignoring damage of 40% of her attack for each of those 25 poisons that I did, which would make her a burst single target DPS as well. 5 times is really low. I do not like that. But looking at how many times she can actually apply poison, though, the problem is that she can't apply a massive amount of poisons anyways on her own. Good or bad? I think it's actually leaning more towards bad, because if you put her in on her own, she can't stack those poisons up anyway. So breaching 5 times for her solo is difficult to do. Okay? So this needs to be increased by a little bit, and if you don't want this to get out of hand, I would say at least 12 times. Yeah, 12 times because of the 4-turn cooldown. Remember, you have to go you have to play out that 4th turn and go to another turn before you can apply this effect anyways. I don't think 12 is unreasonable and would have given her really good damage. Anyways, on her 5th actual ability, when the beautiful warrior on the field when this beautiful warrior is on the field and enemy becomes unable to fight, basically dying, she poisons all enemies and transfers all poison effects to the defeated enemy the poisons that the defeated enemy had at the time. Has a 1-turn cooldown. Cool. When the enemy's HP decreases to less than 50%, inflict 1 poison, 1, on another enemy adjacent to the enemy. Okay, fine, but getting a warrior down to 50% is both easy to do, but it's also hard to do if all your ducks are in a row. So getting the second part to trigger on a high-level PvP content or high-level certain towers is not easy to do. So this could actually be updated when enemies' HP decreases to less than 70%. As an ultra rare warrior, you can inflict poison. This would help her with this 5 times if they increase it, as well as her other natural abilities to apply poison on her own. Remember, I'm going to talk about poison here in just a second, as soon as we get through here. Now, her additional ability, which falls under her attribute damage, which is dual, not poison. When the enemy is afflicted with poison, they will receive dual attribute damage equal to 20% of this beautiful warrior's attack. This effect can trigger up to 7 times per turn against a single target. Now, this is wonky because when I was trying her out, I had her and Volko in a team. Volko wiped out the entire 5 in PvE, 5 enemy team did like 12 million damage. This warrior never even got a turn, but still did between 7 and 8 million damage. Now, granted, the enemy didn't really have defense, and Volko one-shotted him, but I had to ask, why is she doing 8 million damage when she never got a turn? And I have to say it's because of this right here. Instead of this damage applying to the warrior who applied the poison in the first place, she's actually getting credit for the damage that triggers up to 7 times. So when she inflicts poison, she's actually getting the poison damage. One of the best people to use is under the dual attribute Aranea here. She excels at giving everybody in the team the ability to inflict poison, and that's where I'm stacking up, 10, 12, 15, 23, 25 poisons on these single target bosses. So between these two warriors, you can actually do quite a bit of dual attribute damage, but because it has a cap of 7 times per turn, it actually limits her damage. And if I'm not mistaken, this damage actually gets added to her final damage, not the warrior who applied the poison. So that's good and bad, but when you look at damage numbers, you have to understand that she's getting credit for damage she didn't do, which gives you a false sense of what she's really capable of doing. Now, because Aranea excels at giving people like Break Alyssa and multi-attackers the ability to poison the enemy, and then you would think that this ability here to extend the poison duration by 1 would be great, right? Well, I'm not noticing a huge difference because of the cooldown and then having to build up those poison stacks again anyways. It's not noticeable, although it is there. But she's not capable of doing enough damage on her own to make her worth 12-starring right out of the gate. Now, I'm not saying she's not worth damage, but in order to test this, you cannot use her with Aranea. In fact, when you test most warriors, especially multi-phase attackers on boss damage, you can't have Aranea in there anyways because she's inflating the personal damage that she's able to do. So here's the damage that I did on Evil Eye just before making this video. She did 137 million damage, and she's not even stacked with gear, jewels, and things like that. Keep in mind, some of this damage is not her. She's getting the dual attribute damage from the poison effects that are applied. I don't know. Because Aranea is not in here, these other warriors aren't applying poison, meaning that all the damage in this particular scenario could be considered hers, which actually is pretty good damage when you consider the fact that she's not fully geared out and going up against the Evil Eye boss, which is pretty powerful once he gets ramped up. 137 million damage without being fully geared out. Damage taken, she took quite a bit. You guys are going to have to judge for yourself. I have tested her with Aranea, and extending all 25 of the poisons I had on the enemy team, or the boss, by 1 turn really didn't significantly increase the damage that I did. It really didn't. That's just me. I'm going to continue to test her out. In a PvP scenario, I think that she has a lot of potential when coupled with a poisoner, but I don't know if I want to hang my hat on these two stacking poison debuffs on an enemy team in high-level PvP. You could test this out in PvP, and I'm going to test it out further, but a good scenario is to take her into high-level Attribute Tower and see how these two do together with maybe a Corrosion team for curse damage. Keep in mind, Poison is still new, and the only two warriors that really excel at applying it are these two warriors right here, Aranea being the best. So I like her. When I did my review of the physical attribute warrior, I said that she was in the bottom 2 with the dual attribute. A little bit more testing. Blossom, Luna actually comes ahead in damage, in my opinion, over the dual attribute warrior Snow White, meaning that she's at the bottom of the list. The best damage dealer of all the ultra rare warriors currently is Alyssa, followed by skill Dima. Dima puts out a ton of damage, guys. She's actually really decent. But there's other testing that needs to be done with Sacred Treasures and things like that. But what do you guys think of Snow White? She's not going to change the PvP meta for sure. At least not until somebody finds a way to exploit some of the things that she does, and she doesn't really do anything because she doesn't hit that hard. She's capped at some of her defense ignoring damage, which means that she's limited as to what she can do pretty severely. Now, if they raise those caps, kind of like changing some of the physical attribute warriors' abilities that I talked about in that review, she actually could be worthy of the UR title. But right now, the way it is, the only reason I have her is because I pull warriors. I like testing out warriors. But other than that, she's just sitting in the background providing the ultra rare buff of the dual attribute damage and damage resistance that I have. Other than that, she's just another warrior that sits in my inventory, kind of looking pretty. And I apologize for saying that. I'd have to still give her a C rating. Luna gets a C+, Dima gets a B+ for sure, and Alyssa here gets an A+ in terms of being the best so far. Keep in mind, she is the upgraded Alyssa and a pay-to-win kind of warrior. Let me know what you guys thought of this particular review. Sound off in the comment section. Do you like her look? Do you like her spicy pose? Do you agree with me on the analysis of damage in boss fights? Because that's where I thought she was really going to help shine when paired with Aranea. In PvP, I don't like her at all. Even with the 40% damage reduction, assuming you can get enough poisons out there. I don't know that I would even put her on a full dual attribute team, but given some of the damage numbers as a mage that I'm seeing, I could see her being in there. But all in all, I think that there are still better choices for a full dual attribute team centered around corrosion. That's it for this one, guys. See you in the next one.